This week in the business of tech, the Uber court ruling security pros need to know about. Let's analyze the jobs data, the subtle changes in the workplace to mine for opportunity. 4-day workweek trials expand and offer a resource to leverage. And healthcare organizations must now give patients their data. All these stories and more. Hit those like, subscribe, and the notification button and help us pay the bills. And here are this week's stories. Joe Sullivan, the former Uber security chief, was found guilty on Wednesday by a jury in federal court on charges that he did not disclose a breach of customer and driver records to government regulators. In 2016, while the Federal Trade Commission was investigating Uber over an earlier breach of its online systems, Mr. Sullivan learned of a new breach that affected the Uber accounts of more than 57 million riders and drivers. The jury found Mr. Sullivan guilty on one count of obstructing the FTC's investigation and one count of misprison, or acting to conceal a felony from authorities. That, quoting the New York Times. Let's also quote the Washington Post. Even without Sullivan's job history, the trial would have been closely watched as the first major criminal case brought against a corporate executive over a breach by outsiders. It'd also be one of the last. In the 5 years since Sullivan was fired, payoffs to extortionists, including those who steal sensitive data, have become so routine that some security firms and insurance companies specialize in handling the transactions. Quote, "This case will certainly make executives, incident responders, and anybody else connected with deciding whether to pay or disclose ransom payments think a little bit harder about their legal obligations. And that's not bad," said Brett Callow, who researches ransomware at security firm Emsisoft. Most security professionals had been anticipating Sullivan's acquittal, noting that he had kept the CEO and others who were not charged informed of what was happening. Quote, "Personal liability for corporate decisions with executive stakeholder input is a new territory that's somewhat uncharted for security executives," said Dave Shackelford, owner of Voodoo Security. "I fear it will lead to a lack of interest in our field and increased skepticism about InfoSec overall." John Johnson, a virtual chief information security officer for multiple companies, agreed. Quote, "Your company leadership could make choices that can have very personal repercussions to you and your lifestyle," he said. "Not saying everything Joe did was right or perfect, but we can't bury our head and say it will never happen to us." Why do we care? The first time a company executive faced criminal prosecution over a hack, and note, paying the ransom was the issue. Sullivan is facing up to 8 years in prison over this. If you're playing virtual CISO for your companies and customers, note that quote, "Other people's choices can lead to personal ramifications for you in that role. This CISO, after keeping the other executives informed, was held personally liable despite buy-in from the rest of the leadership team. Your virtual CISO job bears that same risk." This case will shake up the norms around breaches, and it's a big deal. Anyone offering security services better get their lawyer on the phone. So let's couple that with the reality of cybersecurity. Leaders are having a tough time keeping companies secure. According to Foundry's 2022 Security Priorities Study, which surveyed nearly 900 security leaders worldwide, 90% think their organization is not doing enough to address cybersecurity risks. Regarding keeping up with security threats when faced with those shortages, 45% of IT executives rely on existing staff to take on more responsibilities. In comparison, 45% use automation technology and 42% outsource their security functions. Why do we care? This is particularly scary in the context of the previous story. Security leaders know their organizations aren't getting enough resources, and may now be personally liable for the risks. Tell me again why anyone wants the CISO job? Sure, there's opportunity here. There's also just a lot of risk too. Some organizations are losing up to $1.3 million a year due to inefficient tasks weighing employees down, according to a report by FormStack and Mantis Research, which surveyed 2,000 workers. While automation might seem the obvious answer, not all businesses are open to change. In organizations with primarily manual, paper-based workflows, 3 in 5 respondents said their biggest struggle with implementing automation was a desire to stick to the status quo, according to the report. This from CIO Dive. And in another article from them, more companies are adopting process intelligence technologies to rationalize everyday business operations, according to an HFS survey of more than 400 senior IT and business executives commissioned by global professional services firm Genpact. Nearly 1/4 of respondents said their companies plan double-digit growth in process intelligence spending over the next 12 to 18 months. Now, couple that with Qualtrics XM's data saying 60% of IT leaders said improving operational efficiency in their IT organization is a critical area of focus. Only 39% said customer growth and retention are critical focus areas, and 43% said driving innovation is key. IT leaders also see improving data management as a critical area of focus. Half of respondents cited improving data quality and management as a critical area of focus. It's a top 3 area of focus for IT leaders in Brazil, France, Germany, the UK, and the US. Why do we care? I often quip that boring things are super profitable. Invoicing and payment processing doesn't sound sexy, big area to think about. There's a theme. Helping organizations with their processes via technology investments is still a wide open field of possibilities. On Friday, the new jobs report came out. Job creation remained robust. The unemployment rate fell to match a 5-decade low, and wages rose steadily in September. It should be good news. Well, these aren't normal times, and this news may cause the Fed to keep increasing interest rates. Pretty much every American who wants a job right now can get one. That says the demand is not being slowed, and thus the moves to restrict demand. CompTIA's analysis of the job report is in line. Continued job gains with a streak of 22 consecutive months. Year-to-date tech industry employment is tracking 22% ahead of 2021. Companies across the economy added an estimated 84,000 tech workers for the month. The tech unemployment rate edged down slightly to 2.1%, signaling a still very tight labor market. Employer job postings for technology positions totaled 302,370 for the month, a decrease of 12% versus the previous month. That said, KPMG survey data says that U.S. CEOs are expecting workforce reductions. With about 9 in 10 expecting a recession in the next year, 51% are considering workforce reductions over the next 6 months, according to a new survey of 400 U.S. CEOs. Then again, those CEOs may be out of touch. 65% of CEOs are saying they want workers back in cubicles 9 to 5 by 2025. Why do we care? I also want a pony, but it isn't going to happen. We'll get into remote work tomorrow. For today, we care about knowing that the job market will remain pretty tight and that everyone who wants a job has one or can get one. So owners are competing for talent or creating new talent, and some big businesses will trim people. I've seen this movie before. More new technology providers are created during downtimes, so expect some additional competition and the opportunity to pick up new staff. I also spotted some salary research worth noting. According to WTW, employers plan to increase their salary budgets by an average of 4.1% next year. Surveys by Salary.com, PayScale, and World at Work place projected increases between 3.8% and 4.4%. That means most employees will see their earnings shrink next year after adjusting for inflation. Why do we care? Workers will work the same for less pay among rising costs. Coupled with the market data from the previous story, owners and managers who compete for talent should know that keeping talent is just as important. Are your planned salary increases enough? Although in Reasons I Like Small Companies news, when asked about their spending intentions, UK SMBs are 3 times more likely than major enterprises, at 49% versus 18%, to increase technology investment, according to research from recruiting company Nash Squared. SMB Group, an analyst firm looking at small business tech trends, also reports high enthusiasm for IT investment. More than half, 54%, of small firms say they intend to increase tech spending. Evidence suggests that many small business owners feel their inherent agility gives them an advantage. Nash Squared reports that twice as many SMEs, 23%, as larger corporates, 10%, are extremely or very effective at scaling good ideas and stopping poor ideas quickly. Why do we care? Well, it's not all good news. The report also notes SMBs have more competition and more limited resources. Despite a feeling sometimes of gloom, this is why I love the SMB space. Agility, enthusiasm, and willingness to move. Are you ready to move as fast as your customers want to? This November, Miami will be the safest place on the internet. MSPs are returning to Miami Beach for the Acronis CyberFit Summit. Not only will you hear former FBI Director Louis Freeh, you'll also witness the latest advancements in cyber protection, DLP, EDR, advanced management, and so much more. There's even a track dedicated to MSP marketing and business growth. The entire event will be capped off with an inspirational message from Irvin Magic Johnson, live and in person. You don't want to miss it. And I'll also be there too, covering the event, and I look forward to talking to you. Get all the details and register now at acronis.events. I'll see you there. Yesterday, raw jobs data. Today, the subtlety of the workplace. Remote work has helped boost employment for the second largest minority group in the U.S., adults with disabilities. The labor force participation rate of workers 16 years and over with disabilities reached 23.3% in November last year, the highest since 2008. It's dipped slightly since then to 22.5% as of August, but that's still higher than it's been since 2009. The information did a return-to-office wellness check and found more satisfaction overall than at the start of the pandemic. 40% are still planning to leave their jobs in the next 2 years, though. Most respondents work on a hybrid schedule, spending between 1 and 4 days a week in the office. But nearly 40% are fully remote and much more likely to wish they were. Roughly 10% of respondents are fully back in the office. 43% are working either significantly or slightly more than they were in 2020. And with all that work, 48% feel they are more productive than they were 2 years ago. Managers and execs aren't even sure they need the same people. A UK survey comprising 5,000 knowledge workers, 750 hiring managers, and 400 senior decision makers by consultancy and digital found that people at different levels of seniority within companies have substantially different ideas about what skills are most needed. For example, 60% of chair people believe their company has enough people with software engineering skills, compared to just 42% of senior managers. Likewise, half of the managing directors think they have enough people with data analytics skills on the payroll, compared to 44% of managers. Pay transparency is rolling out further. California requires pay ranges on job ads for companies with 15 or more employees starting January 1st, joining other states and New York City on the list. Oh, and a Dutch court just ruled last month that a Florida company owed a remote worker $73,000 after it fired him for refusing to keep his webcam on. Working remotely, the man didn't feel comfortable keeping his webcam on all day, and the Dutch court sided with the employee. In all of this, there remains opportunity. Despite 40% of companies wanting to implement 15 workplace technologies by 2025, 17% do not have any currently. Many businesses are evaluating how technology can support employees in the office, but implementation challenges remain, according to a JLL survey released Tuesday. Why do we care? I quipped yesterday that those CEOs who think we'll be back in the office fully by 2025 are delusional. Here's why. Let's take workers who are generally happy and make them less so, and an environment where we're bringing both adults with disabilities and those with childcare concerns back into the workforce. That in an environment where they can't even agree with their managers about the skills they need. Maybe, just maybe, focus on being a better manager than worrying so much about that. Two other points to note. First, with remote work being as flexible as it is, you'd better know where your employees are. A company in Florida loses the case in a Dutch court. You know how they could have avoided that? Less micromanagement. Think about it. If they had simply trusted the employee to work and measured based on results, there's no case. Second point. The use of technology to manage work remains an open area. Think more building workflow processes and a lot less monitoring software. Technology providers will go very far there. The 4-day workweek continues to get coverage. Starting last week, 28 more companies in the US and Canada will begin a 6-month pilot of shortened work weeks in partnership with nonprofit group 4-Day Week Global. Not all companies are putting in place a 32-hour week. While most people in the pilot are working 80% of their previous hours for the same pay, some companies are reducing hours less aggressively with half-day Fridays or 4 slightly longer days, according to 4-Day Week Global. This after successful pilots in the UK, testing in Japan and Spain, and noting that not all industries can pull this one off. Why do we care? I'm still fascinated by this space, and I love areas of chaos like this for the opportunity to explore new benefits. Today, however, I wanted to point out 4-Day Week Global as an organization to take note of. If you're considering this, there's a resource to consult. Don't take it from me, take it from specialists. Let's catch up on several new sets of rules now in effect. A new executive order was signed that outlines how the U.S. will uphold its commitments under a new European Union U.S. data privacy framework that the White House announced alongside the European Union Commission in March. The framework strengthens existing privacy and civil liberties safeguards around U.S. intelligence collection activities, requiring such activities to be conducted, quote, only in pursuit of defined national security objectives, according to a White House fact sheet. Also in new rules, healthcare organizations must give patients unfettered access to their complete health records in digital format. The new federal rules, passed under the 21st Century Cures Act, are designed to shift the balance of power to ensure that patients can get their data and choose whom to share it with. CISA has also ordered federal agencies to better account for the technology they use and the vulnerabilities within them. The directive will be considered a success when all federal civilian agencies have an up-to-date inventory of network assets, a list of software vulnerabilities, data on how often an agency tracks its assets, and the ability to send all of this to CISA. The White House is moving forward with a plan to develop a labeling system to alert consumers to the security risks associated with connected devices. A common label for products that meet U.S. government standards and are tested by vetted and approved entities is the goal. The effort will begin with routers and home cameras, characterized as the most prevalent and often most at risk technologies. And in a proposed rule, the Department of Labor has proposed a new regulation that would make it harder to classify gig workers as independent contractors. To determine whether a worker should be classified as an employee or independent contractor, the Department of Labor now says it will use the department's approach with court's Fair Labor Standards Act interpretation and the economic reality test, which considers how long an individual has worked for an agency, their role at the company, and opportunities for profit and loss, among other factors. Why do we care? Data is becoming a priority for consumers, and these changes reflect that. It's an asset to protect, and these rules define that. I've noted in a recent question that I answered that data governance is a space to watch. Here's more fodder. Awareness of vulnerabilities was my other area of focus here. The theme, making sure the consumer of the technology, be it the government agency or the individual consumer, is aware of the risks of managing that technology. That principle should be one a provider latches onto within their customer engagement. Meta had their Connect event, and while the headline was the $14.99 Meta Quest Pro, that's not where I want to spend my time. Instead, Meta and Microsoft announced a partnership to focus on how people work and game in virtual reality. Microsoft will bring Teams, Office, Windows, and Xbox Cloud gaming to Meta's Quest VR headsets. That includes bringing Windows 365 desktops and the Teams experience, including adapting Meta's avatar system for Teams and Teams getting support within Meta's Horizon workrooms. Microsoft had its own event this week too. Among the announcements is Microsoft Teams Premium, which adds AI-powered smart features. The most significant addition is the new meeting recap feature that essentially adds an AI virtual assistant to each meeting to share highlights and automatically capture all important parts. If you want to see Microsoft's commitment to Teams, they've ensured that Cisco's video conferencing hardware will be updated to let users set Teams as the default. WebEx isn't going anywhere. Cisco made that clear in a press release. Also, this week was Google's Cloud Next event, and here's what I noted. Google is investing more in its Smart Canvas concept for docs, letting users embed information and apps inside a document. It's also releasing some new Meet features with hybrid work in mind, like automatic meeting transcripts and an AI-powered framing tool for conference room cameras to keep speakers in focus. Why do we care? The investments into the work layer by all three are what I wanted to note here. I'm not a believer in the metaverse right now, and we'll be breaking this down on Tuesday's episode of Killing It, but that's the red herring. Microsoft Teams and Google Workplace are getting the investments, and there's a reason. It's where the importance of the technology stack has moved, and customers want consulting here. They need the expertise.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.